Okay, hi everyone. My name is Mindy. I've been working in community for over 10 years. Been super privileged to work with some companies like Imager, Patreon, most recently Discord, where I have been scaling community programs as well as a team of wonderful people there. And I'm always happy to help anyone learn and grow in community, and outside of work, normally doing things like collecting trinkets, scuba diving, or playing wholesome video games. Just when I was preparing for this talk, I realized that I have attended, I think, every CMX Summit since 2014, so this is a dream come true for me to be up here and talk to you. So if you felt like, wow, I really want to be up there one day, proof that you can do it. So keep plugging along in community. Okay, so just wanted to share a little bit. I mean, everyone knows community is a team profession, so I just wanted to give a shout out to my team at Discord, who are fantastic, and some other things that inspire me to keep working. It's memes, of course, and my cat Marmalade. So throughout the presentation, if you see a picture of my cat, that's going to be a special tip to listen to, a Marmalade top tip, if you will. And hopefully that just makes things a little more fun on day 2 in the afternoon. So we're really here to talk about community programs. I'll be talking about what they are, so we have a shared definition and kind of share some attributes and examples. We'll talk about when it makes sense to create a program for yourself, your community, and your business. And then we'll wrap up with some archetypes, talking about incentives, and some metrics for success. So what on earth is a community program? This is my definition. I think a community program is a specific focused effort to provide a high impact to a specific section of your community. So if we kind of break that down, the 3 main attributes that we'll be talking about are how community programs are specific, designed around delivering a high impact for your business and the members, and they have to be balanced, of course, as in all good things are. So first of all, specific. So community program really should focus on a very specific persona, category, or subsection of your broader community. And if you're thinking, well, how do I narrow that down? Here are some questions that you can ask yourself. What is the most valuable segment of your current broader community? How many members are in that segment? What are their needs? And how does that differ to perhaps some of your other segments that you work with? And then as you think a little bit more, what value might those members be able to provide each other if you brought more of those niche people together? And next up is high impact. So community programs really have to be about delivering an outsized impact for both the participants and the business to justify the sort of ROI that a community program normally requires, because it is a specific effort. It's going to take more time to spin it up. And so you really want to make sure that it's going to deliver that sort of punch of value. So when figuring out what the right impact might be, think to yourself, what are some especially tricky challenges that your business or your department is facing, especially as we're thinking about annual planning. It's a great time to kind of review this. What's the story you and your brand want to be telling? What would a dream headline look like for you? And what challenges are you sort of consistently hearing both from your members and your business? And as you kind of noodle on these things, maybe a program might kind of be shaping up. And lastly, as with all community work, I'm a big believer in this happy Zen diagram, where you really do want to be sitting at the intersection between business goals and member needs. So questions to ask for yourself to kind of check on the balanced nature is, how will this program help participants grow and thrive in their own lives? How is this contributing to your business's mission? What brand values could this program bring to life? And how might you balance other elements, perhaps like offline and offline? So our first Marmalade top tip is not only for programs, but all for community work, but really do reflect often on your give versus take sort of exchange. And I think with community programs, that's especially true. And to be honest, it might even look different throughout the year. So the first quarter, you might be really aware that this is going to be a pretty gnarly take session from the community. I really need to make sure in Q2 we're spending some significant time giving back. And then often with community programs, you may be working with people who are really passionate about your brand, and the line between engaging and exploiting can be a blurry one. So just check in with what you're asking, the time that you're asking from people. Is it engagement, or is it potentially straying into a side that we don't ever want to stray in our work? Cool. So just to kind of talk through a couple of examples from some of my recent roles. These are all programs that I built with some other fantastic people who are actually talking today at the conference. Shout out to Emily and some folks. So one of the first programs I worked on at Patreon was a creator in residency program. And the goal was to invite creators to the Patreon office to use the facilities, work on a dream project, and get tailored support. So this idea came from hearing from creators express to me in the community that they were struggling with things like time management, how to use marketing, social media, having the space and resources to take on a more ambitious project. And I was in the office one day and was, oh my gosh, like we have all those people and those things here. And to be honest, the community is what's making all this possible. How can we literally open our doors and share this with the people who are making it all happen? So the idea for the residency program was that we would invite specific creators to come to the office who could benefit from the resources the company had already paid for. The impact it had for Patreon was a couple of things that I had heard from conversations with my colleagues. You know, so many staff at companies don't get to engage with the community like we do, and maybe if you're working in trust and safety or accounting or human resources, it's harder to kind of connect the work that you're doing and the impact it's having on your community's lives. So getting to have creators come to the office, so anyone who was working there, when they're getting a snack, could kind of see a creator, it really kind of brought the mission to life. So that was a huge part of the goal. But we also got to create some really great social media content. We got some good press stories, and it was a great trust-building exercise as well. Then from that, we kind of realized that what we actually needed to make was an accelerator program. So having one creator at a time wasn't really going to move the wheel as much as we wanted to. So then a new program formed, which was about accelerating creators' growth, helping them refine and revamp their membership. So trying to solve the same things, people struggling with finances, growth, marketing, but instead we created a 6 to 8 week program with a lot of tailored content and a chance for them to connect with their peers. Often these were creators who were experiencing rapid growth. There was a podcaster who made a podcast about The Bachelorette. They went viral, and overnight they experienced huge growth, but they were both working full-time. This was a side project. They really didn't know what on earth to do. So this program was designed to help people realizing they were running a business and kind of give them the tools that they needed. Similar impact, it created some great stories, deep trust, and we also saw that when these creators had this newfound confidence, they created additional Patreon pages. So we saw additional revenue come in. And then the third program that also spun was we saw so much of the value was from those connections that were being made in the accelerator, and we wanted to bring that experience to as many people in our community as possible. So we created the Accountability Club, or the A Club for short, where each club is led by a volunteer, and they just meet regularly once a week to sort of push and encourage each other. So again, all of these three programs are solving similar goals, but just doing it in different ways. Now some examples from Discord, which are going to be a little different. We have our partner program, which is designed to highlight the most inclusive, engaging, and welcoming communities, and really support the heroes who are running them. It's very specific. We're really targeting those admins and moderators who are building successful communities on Discord. We need to have this strong relationship with them so we can use them in product beta testing, use them in marketing, and make sure that we don't lose sort of these best examples of what we want our platform to look like. So that's one example. A new one that we launched this year, this is a very internal example of a community program. It's not really designed to be externally marketed, but we call it the Test Garden. And it brings a couple hundred admins and moderators under NDA from a diverse range of backgrounds and communities to be directly involved in product development. The again, super specific. Discord's building the features that serve this audience by having this close connection, and we're getting to build use cases and case studies at the same time. Lastly, I just wanted to give an example of a more consumer-facing program. So we have the Hype Squad program, and that's all about enabling and empowering superfans of Discord to contribute to our success through getting exclusive opportunities. So this is what we call more of a C2C program, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. And they've allowed us to outsource a lot of some global marketing tactics to the highly motivated users who are really excited to get to have this connection with us. So hopefully that gives you all a good understanding of what I mean when I say community program. And let's kind of dive in to the next phase, about when you should build one. So I wouldn't be doing my due diligence if I didn't mention there may be some foundational community elements you may want to tackle first before diving in and building a really fun program. So just make sure that you have some good elements in place, a mission and a vision. Maybe you have an annual roadmap for your community. How are you checking progress against that? Is it OKRs, goals? Have you thought about headcount and an org chart for your community, as well as documenting your processes and outlining what your big bets might be? So these are kind of the things that I would definitely recommend that you get in place, because a community program will need to sort of fit into this, and you want it to ladder up to your mission and vision. But let's say you have all that great stuff in place. Here are the sort of the three main phases that I would recommend when building a community program. So the first stage is discovery and strategy. Then you'll want to build and launch it. And then thirdly, you kind of live in this state of constant evaluation and evolution with community programs, which is super fun for me. So let's talk about the first phase, discovery and strategy. So I do believe that a great trick with community programs is that you can start them pretty small and ground them in the reality of your resources today, while also having this more motivating, inspiring, longer-term vision of what you want this community program to look like in the future. And so make sure you invest adequate time to surveys, interviews, both internal and external. So internal staff members, who are your 15 biggest stakeholders, as well as those external members who fit into that specific segment. And then give yourself some time to really hone your learnings, develop your ideas, listen to what your gut is saying, and give yourself the time that I feel as community professionals, we're always rushing from one thing to the next, but I think this is where you get to have some thinking time. And then as you're developing it, seeking feedback from those sources. You probably want to make a proposal deck, get it in front of stakeholders, have a timeline, receive official approval, and then you will be good to start executing on your community program. Make sure if you ever had this idea of where you may just bump into your CEO in a lift or when you're getting a coffee, could you easily define what this program is trying to solve? How will you solve this problem, and how will you measure it? And a kind of a framework that I found to be useful of just really crisping and clarifying and sort of really nailing this very simple definition is the get to buy. So what are you trying to get, to do what, and buy? So an example might be, we're trying to get the top student users in the US to teach other new users how to use the product by creating a student ambassador program that will reward students for their time. So could definitely kind of see the value of a program like that very quickly with this framework. Now we're on to the build and launch phase. So here are some things to sort of consider when you're in this phase. You may want to think about what platforms you want to use, any CRMs. How will people join your program? Are you going to be inviting them? Or will they be applying to your program? And if it's an application, what does that look like? What are the questions you need to ask? Where is that going? Who's going to be reviewing those applications? You might find yourself, like myself, joining a job and seeing something like 8,000 applications in the backlog and having to review them all and realizing, oh my gosh, this needs to be a more scaled way to kind of have people join this program. So having automations, emails is great. As a program gets more advanced, you might develop things like merchandise, you'll probably need some guidelines and even a code of conduct to make sure that people within your program are doing what you aim to get out of it. And then the final phase, which I feel like community programs spend a lot of time here, which is the evolve and evaluate. So the reason this is important is because it's much easier to change a program when it's in those earlier stages, when you're only working with tens of people as opposed to tens of thousands. So listening to that early feedback at the start is critical. And evaluate without ego, which is easier, of course, to type than it is to do, but making sure you're understanding the return on investment, how are your customers responding and reacting to it, what are the internal perceptions of this program. If people aren't really bought into it, you may need to do a bit more sort of listening and trust building internally to make sure this program's not getting like a bad rep inside and that people really understand the value and why you're doing it. Is your business changing priorities, which I feel like happens a lot, or are there new realities, and how could the program evolve to support those realities and business priorities as they're happening. Another Marmalade tip. This was a big learning that I had during my time at Patreon, which was, for most of my career, which I'm sure lots of you are familiar with, you're often the only community person in your whole company. And you spend so much of your time giving to the community. I kind of didn't spend as much time focusing on those internal relationships inside. I thought I can just just throw myself into the community, and that will be great. And then I realized that my ability to serve their needs and do so in a large way hinged on my ability to influence people internally. I was never going to get the resources or the budget or the product integrations that I wanted if I didn't actually take some time away from the community to spend reading other teams' decks, building those relationships, and figuring out how to integrate more. So this was definitely a big thing. And honestly, how I unlocked the ability to create community programs really kind of hinged on being able to do this. Okay, and then thirdly, we have how. So every community program will there may be some common elements, but they really should be designed for your specific community and business goals. But happy to share some fundamental kind of aspects. Here are some 3 common types of community programs. We have a super user program, where you may want to elevate your top contributors to help them model successful behaviors, provide leadership, and inspire the next generation of community members. I would also consider a gamified program, a type of community program. Perhaps it's about building ranking, badging, to driving those behaviors again and recognition, but maybe it's more scaled and more gamified. And then you have the C2C program, a customer-to-customer program utilizing volunteers to scale initiatives way beyond they could with internal resources. And I thought the Microsoft panel earlier gave a really good example of how they've done that with their support community. And then I just wanted to lay out some metrics that you may want to look at for these different types of community programs. So if you're building a super user program, there's sort of primary metrics and then secondary outcomes is how I like to think about it. So some primary metrics is making sure your super users are happy. So sending out a CSAT score, and then developing what I'm calling a voice of the customer report. So perhaps sharing once a month or once a quarter some top themes or trends that you're seeing from your super users. But ultimately, this program may actually be trying to drive monthly active users or retention, and that's really the kind of the secondary business impact that you may want to tie it to. If it's a gamified program, maybe it's just about the number of posts people are making, but ultimately you're trying to decrease the amount of tickets that come in. And if it's a C2C program, you may be looking at some primary metrics of being about active users, some of those engagement metrics, but maybe the business impact would be about that user-generated content or getting new members to sign up. And one thing that helps me kind of figure out what metrics to look at is to write the dream statement that I want to be able to tell my boss 6 months after a community program launch. So an example of that might be, we see a higher rate of key performance indicators between customers involved with community marketing programs than not. That's an example of that's what I'm trying to deliver. That's the headline that I want to give my boss in 6 months. And then I work back from that to make it happen. And then I really wanted to just talk briefly about incentives, because I think that's an important element in our community work, especially programs. And this will define your community program more than anything else. So there's a scale between intrinsic motivators to extrinsic. And I think, yeah, I just want to talk about it because it's exciting. So on intrinsic, we have those very common motivators in community, things like curiosity, creating belonging, perhaps challenging yourself to learn something new, creating those connections with friends, and developing a sense of mastery in a topic. Kind of in the middle, you have these career success, academic achievement, reputation. They're kind of tapping into both sides. And then extrinsic is more about these financial rewards. Maybe it's exclusive merchandise, access to an event, praise publicly. So I've often seen that when people get involved with community, they may start out from the intrinsic stance, but as they spend more time there, or you're asking more from them, it may move to the extrinsic phase. So I think having a strong stance of like how you want to motivate your members and how you're going to reward them for their time is good. And it might be a mixture of these, and that's totally fine, but just making sure that you've kind of spent some time thinking about that. And one more marmalade tip. The best incentives I have found are the ones that spark that deepest engagement. And they often are intrinsic, such as recognition, giving back, and growth. I think you do have to be, it's a great way to be a voice internally, is to really decide what are things where we're just going to pay people for their time. Is it perhaps whenever we want to commission some content or feature a user in press, we should just pay people for their time. Non-negotiable, this is our stance, this is our policy, this is how much we recommend we pay people, and these are the terms if you want to work with the community. But there may be more times in community programs where the value really is just getting to give back, getting to help, and how can you encourage that as well? It shouldn't be a bad thing, but as long as it's coming from a place of a policy. And then as you get more advanced in community programs, there's actually a chance you might have more than one, and they can even feed into each other. So this is an example of how two programs work together. One program that was very specifically designed to attract and retain new users in new segments that the business was very focused in. So for example, college students, that's a very specific segment that we're trying to go after. The program was designed to engage with them, give them some value, and hopefully they would then convert into being new users and then feed into another program that we had that was targeted to existing users. And we wanted to engage and retain those superfans that we had built, who would then hopefully inspire new growth. So now you kind of have a flywheel going and a sense that people are being taken care of with a custom program, whatever stage they are at in their journey through their program, which feels great when you can do it. So I'm now realizing I talked very quickly at the beginning, so I do apologize for that. But to summarize, community programs can drive high impact for a specific section of your community. Make sure you deeply understand your business goals and member needs before designing that community program. Starting small and getting that internal buy-in is a great way to go about it before you launch a global, scalable, beautiful community program. Spend time considering incentives, metrics, and scalability, as well as ensuring you're evolving, iterating, and improving your community program. And of course, always have fun. This is a wonderful career to be in. I genuinely feel like our community can tell if we're having a good time and if we're designing experiences that are going to bring surprise and delight to people's day. Every time we're asking people to spend time in our community, they're choosing to not be doing something else, whether that's TikTok or Netflix or spending time with their loved ones. So making sure that if you're asking from their time and their energy, that they're going to get something out of it. So having some fun is always an important element. Okay, well, we weren't going to do open questions, but if people want to reach out to me on Twitter, I'm at Mindy, and of course, this is my email. Genuinely would love to talk to any of you about community programs or any challenges that you're having in your community career too. Would love to hear from you. Okay, and that's me. So enjoy the rest of the conference, and we'll see you all later. Okay.